The African-American legend C. writes, highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they've been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is the 106th Mayor of New York City, David N. Dinkins. Hi, Dave.
Fighter pilot, how are you?
Doing good. Well, we're all doing good. The Democrats won the control of the Congress in the November 06 election. One of the things that people are now doing is the analysis. Who's getting the credit? Who did what? Why did it happen? What's your analysis?
20/20 hindsight is terrific, isn't it?
Particularly when you win.
Well, first, before we do that, I don't need to explain to this audience why I call you fighter pilot.
You're right.
I mean,
we shot down those planes in World War II.
They understand that.
That's it.
Dr. Brown is one of my heroes. I mean, he truly is, So I always call him fighter pilot.
And I returned by saying Semper Fi for a Marine.
I was a Marine in World War II, but I didn't see any combat. See, so I have a special feeling about people like you and our brother Charlie Rangel, who was a decorated
Korean
veteran. He's got a Bronze Star and a
Purple Heart.
Purple Heart. But
Purple Heart means you got hurt.
He was injured. He was shot. But about the election, beforehand, many of us said, well, we've got an excellent opportunity to take back the House, and who knows, maybe even the Senate. And lo and behold, we got both. And so we're delighted. And we've been saying for years that Charlie Rangel, who was a ranking member on Ways and Means, the top Democrat on Ways and Means, and if the Democrats were to become the dominant party, then he would be chairman, and how important that is. This is even more important than the position that Adam Clayton Powell held.
As head of Health, Education,
and Welfare, which was very important, and Lyndon Johnson said that Adam Powell passed more legislation than anybody else.
The Title I, the Pell Grants for college students, so many programs that come under the legacy of Adam Powell.
Yeah, and it was not an easy thing to do. Well, Charlie stands now to do even more. And I am just delighted, and I've kidded with him for years that when he became chairman, that I wanted to have an office in his office. So as the campaign wore down to the end, getting close to Election Day, and there'd be some positive news in the press, I would call him up. And he and I have many other things to talk about, concern for the Boys Choir of Harlem, lots of other things. But I said, no, I don't want to talk about any of that today. I just want to be sure that you understand that I don't care what kind of a chair I have or how big the desk is, as long as it's in your office. So I am just so pleased that he's the chairman of Ways and Means, and it's going to mean good things for the nation, certainly for New York.
That's very interesting. Many people don't know what Ways and Means does. Do they do the budget? I know, but I'm just asking these rhetorical.
Well, no.
Do they do the budget? Do they do the taxes? Do they do the appropriations?
All of that. No, not appropriations.
They don't do appropriations.
Don't do appropriations, but all money bills have to start in the House. And the place where they start is Ways and Means. And Charlie is going to have the ability to offer legislation that will reduce taxes, maybe some tax, what do you call the reverse tax? The
targeted income credit.
Right, income tax credit, and of course the thing that's in the headlines right now as we speak is his call for a draft.
A reinstitution of national service.
Right, and that's better put. And because he's not simply talking about going to war, he's saying you should give all Americans should give some service. Now, of course, Charlie recognizes that it's an uphill battle to get this passed. He knows that. But he also starts a discussion, a debate about old men passing laws to send young men to war.
But let's look at that. I happen to agree with Charlie's direction, but during the Vietnam era, we had a draft, but rich people and middle-class people were able to work out ways of dodging the draft, which means that if we have this national service, maybe the better educated will get the work as teachers. So there has to be some kind of lottery that goes into this.
Yeah, well, the legislation is not yet drafted. But
we're drafting it right now, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. and you have to have the capacity to close loopholes.
That's right.
So that, as you put it, the wealthy are not able to avoid it. Now, in World War II, as you know, few people gave a thought to not going.
Yeah.
This wasn't Vietnam, and that's how I ended up in the Marine Corps, because I figured I was going to get drafted, and if you could volunteer, you could select your branch of service. It's a very long story how I ended up getting drafted anyway, but was able to get in the Marine Corps. But I didn't think about, well, let me go to Canada, or how can I avoid this? You had to be 4F, which meant you had some disability, or in an essential occupation. And Charlie's mindful of all of that, and so he will draft legislation that will close that kind of loophole, and also, I am sure, provide for alternate methods of service. And that's a good thing. But if nothing happens, it forces people to stop and talk about, well, who is it that these old men are sending to war? It is our young men, and young men who don't have the ability to do anything else.
Well, they may have the ability to do something else, but are trapped in the circle. For example, Senator Kerry got into trouble by saying that if you don't get an education, you'll end up in Iraq, suggesting that the people in Iraq were uneducated. There are many, obviously, highly educated people there who've chosen to do that.
Yeah, he kind of put his foot in it. He didn't. That's not what he meant. But he destroyed.
What did he mean?
he destroyed any chance he has of seeking the presidency. That's for sure.
He gave the impression that he was looking down on people who were doing the work.
And I know him at least sufficiently well, so that I don't think that's what he meant at all. He just, as we do sometimes, we get to talking and the wrong words come out.
Well, you are a political leader, elected official. You get interviewed many, many, many times. How do you manage to keep the smooth, even presentation that you give in the media and people like to hear you? How do you do that?
You're very kind, Dr. Brown, but largely it's from watching and listening to you.
Thank you.
And that's what enables me to. But I do recognize that one has to be careful. You're under greater scrutiny if you're in the public eye. And some things that some of us can say will matter not at all. But the same thing said by a Charlie Rangel, a President Bush, a John Kerry will focus a greater attention on it because of who they are.
And one of the things about politics, there is an interaction between what's the best way to do it, what's the alternative way to do it, what's the wrong way to do it. And the press in particular will just pick out those sound bites that deal with either the best or the worst and say that's what Dinkins believes. Now, you did something in your administration that was very clever. You wanted to we needed more police officers on the streets, and we needed to get some tax revenue to do that. But you combine the recruitment of more police officers with social services, what you call cops and kids. Now, that has helped. That helped to turn the crime away around in the city, and also began to focus more on the schools. The problem is that the resources haven't moved as much toward the kids part of it as they have toward the cops part of it. If you were mayor today, how would you handle that?
Well, I would try to do the same things that we were doing, except with greater resources. And thanks to you and a lot of others, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity is a success, although the court because of really one conservative judge has determined that we need less money than we really do. So it'll be interesting to see what the governor does now, the new governor does with respect to that. But if I were in office as mayor and had the power that the current mayor has in education, because we didn't have that heretofore, as you know, with a board of education, but now with this Department of Education, with the mayor in control, I would want to spend far more of our money in doing things like reducing class sizes. And I happen not to be a great fan of things that I see as competitors with public education
like
funds.
Vouchers and charters.
Like vouchers and charters. And I know that some people for whom I have great respect think highly of it and may point to a specific instance that they say this proves how good it is, but I'm not convinced.
Well, the main thing about a public system, it should be good for everybody. It shouldn't just be certain isolated. You can't have one subway line that runs to Flushing that's good and another one that runs to Harlem is bad. And one of the things that we've done in terms of transportation is to try to even that out. In the case of education, many people who are making judgments about education haven't worked or spent time in the public schools where they need to understand what goes on. The public school work is one of the most exciting kinds of work around, but because you have such a range of students and such a range of curriculum, you have to be very creative in working that out. And that's something you recognize when you set up the Beacon schools. The Beacon schools, one of the first was on the campus of Bronx Community College when I was the president. And it kept the schools open from 3 to 10 o'clock at night.
Well, I'm very pleased about the Beacon schools. Mayor Giuliani undid many things that we had done in our administration, but he didn't undo that. And he didn't change the name. I thought that he would change the name and call them something else. And I'm told that they have Beacon schools in other sections of the country. But it was a good thing, a very simple idea, really. If the buildings are there, why not use them beyond the usual hours of instruction?
And you broke down the business of having to pay extra money to the custodians to get access to buildings that belong to the public. Now, it's interesting how things like that happen. Why do you think the custodians got a stranglehold on those buildings back in the past days?
Way back when, some mayor, I don't know which mayor, I mean, I really don't, I would say if I did, but some mayor way back when in contract negotiations gave away the store. As you know, the contracts didn't require the custodians to be concerned with the room above a certain height, in painting or maintenance and whatnot. How ridiculous could that be? And I remember when back in the 60s, when we were demonstrating and carrying on about schools, and we were having meetings in school auditoriums and whatnot. And do you remember the brain surgeon who got involved in civic stuff and education?
Yeah, well, I forget his name. Dr.
His name come to me.
Yeah, Tom Matthews.
Matthews,
That's
you got it.
Yeah.
You got it, Roscoe. And Dr. Matthews, he seized a school once on 145th Street in Harlem, and he came in and he said, we're taking over this school under the authority of District Leader David Dinkins. And I didn't know anything about it.
That was you.
I didn't know anything about it. But when they asked me about, press asked me about it, I said, yeah, right on.
Now, we're talking about the victory of the Democrats in the November elections. One of the problems about a victory is that you have to deliver on what you do. What do you think the main agenda items will be of the Democrats as they move ahead, both nationally and then later we talk about the state?
Well, I see, among other things, the minimum wage, which I think they can achieve now, because everybody sort of sees that, and it's fairly easy to graphically portray that with a minimum wage of X dollars and you work a 40-hour week and whatnot, it'll yield only so much money, which is an amount less than the federal government says is the poverty level.
That's right.
So, I mean, you can win that, I think, fairly easily.
And with the Republicans joining.
Right.
Because not every Republican is draconian way on the right. There are many who are closer to the center.
True.
Some people are actually saying the Democrats have more centrists in their party than they have liberals, and that's going to be part of the negotiation process.
Yeah, well, that could, I think you're right. And I think that could, in the final analysis, be a good thing. Because if you have either extreme, you're going to have continuing conflict and tensions. But if you're able to effect compromise, where everybody gives a little bit, yields a little bit, this doesn't mean you're throwing in the towel and you're going to fight like hell to get it your way.
But the scale is not truly almost balanced with the Republicans and their tax cuts for the super rich.
Well,
that's something I think Charlie Rangel and Democrats should attack because it's unfair.
They will, and when they attack that, they will have the support, as you just put it, of many of those people in the middle, of Republicans and Democrats, who recognize the enormous wealth of some. Some of these folks make so much money that their money earns money faster than they can spend it.
They can count. That's right.
And you know, that's they don't quote need it per se.
So what are some of the other issues you think the Democrats might want to focus on? I know they want to try to get out of the war, and since, even though we were in the military, we're not military experts, we can't really say how to get out. We just say, get out.
Well, I think that is one of the biggest issues. You have the so-called war against terrorism, but many of us don't equate that with the battle in Iraq. And I noticed recently on television they had a spate of movies, old movies, on Iwo Jima, on your Tuskegee Airmen back on it, and a lot of the old stuff, and a lot of people died, and we don't seem to appreciate what was done then, and so today's circumstance, and people are very agitated. Look at what's going on with the survivors, surviving relatives of those persons that we lost at 9/11. Now, I mean, it's a relatively a few people as compared to those who died taking the beach at Iwo Jima, and on and on and on, and yet we seem to have forgotten. And so I think that part of what's going to happen now is there will be an increased effort to find a way to end our involvement in Iraq. And I don't know the answer either. I don't know whether, I've listened to a lot of people. Some say pull out now. Some say pull out in stages. Some say send more in. And I'm not sure. But one thing, we will not have, we will have a greater transparency. We're not going to have the president and Rumsfeld's gone, but was it Gates that succeeded him? We're not going to have them just issuing these orders that even the military leaders say make no sense.
Well, clearly we should not have been in Iraq in the first place. It's a political issue which has become a military issue, and that's going to be something that Democrats have to be very careful about. But what about some of the other things, let's say on the domestic front, that you think Democrats could do?
Well, you're gonna have the problem of immigration. We've got varied attitudes about that. Sometimes a function of where one lives. If you're on the Texas border, you maybe have one attitude. If you're in Middle America, you may have a different attitude. But there's some of us who recognize that our country is a land of immigrants, and this country was built on the backs of immigrants and slave labor, and so some of us have a little different attitude, whereas some feel that, well, I'm here now and let's keep those other folks out. So there will be, I think, a lot of attention given to that. and we speak about Charlie Rangel, who's my brother, but people have forgotten that John Conyers, who has even more seniority than Charlie, John Conyers of Michigan, will be chairman of Justice with subpoena power. Mm-hmm. And you, of course, Roscoe, will recall that he's the one who for a good 10, 12 years has had legislation calling for a commission to look at the question of reparations. Mm-hmm. Now, his legislation didn't call for, let's take and divide up and give away the money to all the survivors of slaves, the descendants of slaves. He didn't say that. He said, let's have a commission to look at the question. Obviously, you can't get off the ground with that. But so it'll be interesting to see where that goes now.
By the way, you mentioned that Charlie Rangel was your brother. I think for the audience, you indicate how he got to be your brother.
I love to tell this story. Charlie and I call each other brother, and we've done it for many years. And so when his mother was alive, I was mayor, and Charlie and I called each other brother, and his mother challenged him. Said, why do you call the mayor your brother? He's not your brother. You had one brother, Ralph, and he's gone. And Charlie said, no, Mom, you see, we're close political friends and social friends, and so we call each other brother, and that didn't satisfy his mother. And then it was Mother's Day, and I sent flowers and a note that said, since Charlie is my brother and my mother's gone, therefore you're my mother too. From then on, I was tight with Mom.
You were tight with Mom.
So much so that she was hospitalized. I came to visit, and Charlie was not there, but telephoned, and his mother answered the phone and said, my other son is here.
That's nice. That's a good story.
Charlie said that was all right, but when she started bragging about my son, the mayor, instead of my son, the congressman, that was too much.
Well, today she'd be very proud. Now, we're looking at 2008, the presidential election. What do you think? This is going to be an interesting challenge for the Democrats, for the country. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I have to make a disclosure.
Okay.
I am very much in favor and in support of Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And if she goes, and I hope she will, I think she will, then I'm with her.
Now, the key question is, do you think she can win?
Well, folks told me I couldn't win. And they said, we never had a black mayor. They said,
but you had a mosaic behind you.
That is true. Yeah. They said that John Kennedy couldn't win. So we never had a Catholic. You know, Smith, way back, Alfred E. Smith, he attempted, did not succeed. And they said that Kennedy couldn't make it, but he did.
Well, Hillary has a great record. We endorse her record. The real question is in the politics as they work in this country. Can a Northerner or a Yorker, a woman, a Democrat actually become the president, or should we have a more moderate Democrat to run for president?
No, I say I make my disclosure up front, and so I'm so biased in her favor that I'm not of a school that says let's get a more moderate person and that will increase our chances of winning. I say it might increase our chances of losing, especially when you look at among those persons that the Republicans may put up there, or is Rudolph W. Giuliani. Seen by some as the country's mayor. Well, we in New York know who he is and what he did and what he failed to do prior to 9/11. Now on 9/11, I give him credit. He did what one is supposed to do. As he walked through the dust and the smoke, and he was our hero because the president, understandably, had to be secure because we didn't know whether this was the start of a third world war or what it was. So the president was wherever
reading to children in elementary school.
Yeah, but that's when he first got the word. But thereafter he was secluded. The vice president was in a bunker someplace. So for the whole world, for the whole globe.
Yeah, Rudy did take the leadership.
He didn't have to do anything. He was the person.
Right.
And
but again, let's go back to the election in '08. What do you think Hillary needs to do to win? I
think she needs to, as they always say, you secure your base and then reach out. Mm-hmm. And I think she has to do that.
And what is her base?
Well, her base is New York State. She's done exceedingly well here. Witness her re-election to the United States Senate. Fortunately, Bill Clinton is still the biggest draw one can find, and he will, of course, be supportive of her. Is supportive of her, and I think she needs to continue to do what she has been doing. Apparently, from all reports I get, she did a superb job in the Senate. She didn't come into the Senate saying, "I am the former First Lady." No, she was Senator number 99 or whatever the hell her number was.
Actually, she learned from David Dinkins.
Well,
and the way you work your constituency is to address the issues that they're concerned with. We've been talking with David N. Dinkins, 106th Mayor of New York City, on today's African American Legends, and we're going to have you back to follow some of your predictions.
Time went awfully fast, Roscoe.
It does.
Thank you very much.